you very much. I want to begin by noting we do see Democrats and Republicans come up here together, but we very seldom see Ohio State and Michigan people come up here together. So this really is quite a.
I'm glad that he's wearing a blue shirt. You know,
Well, I know who's grinning. Okay, so but it's great to have you guys here. And seriously, I want to echo everybody else's compliments to all of you. I mean, this has been a monumental and very important work. We tend to focus on the money, and that's clearly important. But I think the regulatory reform that you have in here is going to save the country billions and billions of dollars and deliver much better care, much more expeditiously to our fellow Americans and, frankly, to people all over the world. So thank you very much. I want to assure, I know there are always some concerns about will the money be appropriated the way that you want it appropriated. This happens to be the subcommittee I chair. We put $2 billion in last year on NIH, and had we finished this year, there would have been an additional $2 billion, not counting the resources that you guys are making available here. So I actually would tell you that the greater concern would be that we just take your money and not continue to build the discretionary funds on top, because your money will run out at some point. And that has always been my greatest fear, that we're building a cliff out there. But if we'll continue a bipartisan commitment, I think we have it, to continue to build up the discretionary funding, then, you know, this is going to be new troops to the fight, so to speak, on top of what we were doing. And I can assure you, I know my counterparts in the Senate feel the same way. We're not only going to fulfill the commitment and spend the money that you've made available the way that you intend it to be spent, that we're going to try and put additional discretionary funding on top of that. So it's a great disappointment to me this year that we're doing a CR, because we literally had another $2 billion increase written, ready, agreed to, and signed off on. So it's a mystery to me why we didn't do that. The other thing I would tell you, rather than worry too much about the appropriators, the really critical element for us will be what's the overall budget top line, because NIH is put in, about $163 billion worth of spending authority. It's about 32. And so if all of a sudden you reduce what's going to labor aids dramatically, I mean, you're not going to be able to increase certain portions and then decrease others, although to get the increases we've had the last 2 years, that's what we've done. But so, I mean, the budget itself will become the critical item in determining whether we can continue to build on the discretionary part of the really excellent work you guys have accomplished here. And, we'll see where we end up. I particularly want to thank my friend, Mr. Murphy. You talk late into the night with Chairman Sessions, but when you're late in the night with me, it usually involves, Irish whiskey and cigars. And so I'm sure our conversations at least seem much more productive. I'm not sure they are, but this is really a seminal piece of work. But it will present a real challenge because, as all of you have pointed out, the money's got to come from someplace, and that's discretionary funding, and that's appropriate. I think this is a really good bill, and we're going to sit down and work with my friend and see what we can do to make sure that the funds are behind it to start down. Now, again, I will just caution everybody, depending on the number we get, that means cut someplace else. And that's the hard part of this bill. I remember from an appropriator standpoint, talking to one of my Democratic colleagues last year, and I always call the Labor H bill catnip to Democrats because they love everything in the bill. And my frustrated colleague said, Mr. Chairman, you just have different priorities. And I said, no, I just have fewer priorities. You're not against any place we're spending extra money. You're actually all for it. You want that money at IH. You want extra money at TRIO. You want extra money at Gear Up. There's not a place we put money that you don't want that money there. We just have a top line we got to live within, so we're going to have to make some tough choices. So I would just urge you on both sides of the aisle to help us make those tough choices, to encourage your colleagues. Because I think you're absolutely right. I think Ms. DeGette hit it right on. This is not a partisan issue. Disease doesn't make that kind of distinction. This is something the American people want us to do overwhelmingly. They want us to work together on. You guys have done this in this bill. Like my friend Mr. Pallone pointed out, in a bill this major, you can always disagree over something. There's always something there you'd like to have done differently if you got to write it yourself. none of us get to do that with any pieces of legislation. We have to work across the aisle. We have to work with the members of our committee. We have to work across the rotunda with the United States Senate. We have to work with the administration. So it's never going to be what any one of us would do. But I think you guys have put together really important legislation and have fought it all the way through. And to do that in this divided and divisive era in politics, and to put, I think, the bigger good, in front of all else is something you all should be proud of. Mr. Chairman, this particularly a tremendous tribute to you and a capstone achievement, honestly, in a very distinguished career, not just as your chairman, but in many, many years in this House, where you've always been a leader and you've always brought people together. And boy, you did it this time. And again, I compliment your Democratic colleagues, Diane, you especially, but I know, Frank, how hard you guys worked on this too. It's a big deal. And so with that, I just want to reassure you, we will put the money where you ask us to, at least as long as I'm chairman there. And we'll try to find additional resources to marry with what you've done here. And we're particularly pleased that you went where we can't go and dealt with the tough regulatory issues, the tough policy questions, to make sure that the dollars we have are going to be spent a lot more efficiently. And just help us find some money to make sure that Mr. Murphy's really excellent work isn't just a matter of being, great policy, but it's actually got the resources behind it that we can begin to change lives. I know how hard he's worked on that. So great effort, great bill. I look forward to supporting it on the floor and look forward to working with all of you as we implement this going forward over several years.
Mr. Chairman, on that, the difficulty you have reminds me of the fellow who goes into a pub, and he says, bartender, I'd like 6 Guinnesses, 6 Jamesons, and 6 Bailey Irish creams. And the bartender brings them over and says, would you like a tray to take that back to your table? The fellow says, no, and he then proceeds to chug down the 6 Guinnesses, the 6 Jamesons, and the 6 Bailey Irish creams in a matter of a minute. The bartender says to him, my gosh, what's wrong with you? I can't believe it. Is there something troubling you? He says, well, you drink that fast, too, if you got what I've got. And the bartender, trying to show sympathy, says to him, what is it you've got? He says, I've only got $1.
I'm not going to try and top that. I yield back.
Mr. McGovern.